it's a toxic thing that people are doing. It's this looking for people that are bad and looking for things that are wrong, looking for wrong speak. It's very toxic. It's toxic for the people that are doing it. It's toxic for the people that are receiving it.
Joe Rogan's statements on Hollywood's woke culture sparked a heated controversy. He described it as toxic when people constantly look for mistakes or wrong speak in others, calling out Hollywood's growing sensitivity. Rogan argued that this climate of censorship stifles creativity and true expression, sparking fresh discussions on freedom in comedy and media.
It's not a way that human beings would ever communicate in one-on-one. I mean, I try to communicate with people the same way online as I would if they were right in front of me. I don't always succeed.
This time, it wasn't just another podcast rant. Rogan launched a full-on attack on the woke machine that controls everything, from the movies we watch to the topics we're allowed to discuss. The wild part? He may just bring it all down. Rogan has been speaking out about the way woke culture is taking over the industry, making it hard to find movies that are actually funny anymore. And he's calling out exactly why it's happening.
There's two types of older liberals. There's the type that is an old hippie and is oh man, that was cool, you did that. And then there's types that look at you
well, he wasn't a liberal.
No.
He used to be a Republican.
Yeah.
And then he got on MSNBC.
Yeah, you gotta go with the money, I guess.
Change his panties.
Yeah, but it was that was a weird.
Michael Easter talks about two kinds of older liberals. One group is the laid-back old hippie type who just enjoys things and says, "That was cool." The other group judges people for changing their views, like pointing out when someone used to be a Republican before switching to MSNBC. Rogan humorously suggests that some people just change their beliefs for financial gain. He then mentions classic comedies like There's Something About Mary and Kingpin, praising them as great examples of comedy.
Because people get very aggressive with it. Just like people were super aggressive about the vaccine. I hate seeing people die because they made a poor choice. But there's something insane about how many people were pro-vaccine advocates that were shaming people and angry at people, and now they're dead.
In a podcast with Brett Weinstein, Joe Rogan discussed the heated debates around the vaccine. He expressed sadness over people losing their lives due to poor decisions, while also pointing out the irony. Many of those who were once strongly advocating for the vaccine and shaming others are no longer alive. Rogan noted that these individuals didn't pass away naturally or from old age, but rather because of choices that ultimately led to their untimely death.
It was announced by the organizing committee that the situation would be reversed, and they asked white student, staff, and faculty not to come to campus, and that did not at all sit well with me.
Weinstein shared how an organizing committee at his college announced a decision asking all white students, staff, and faculty to stay off campus for a day. Weinstein didn't agree with this move and chose not to comply. In response, he faced intense backlash from around 50 students, most of whom he'd never even met, accusing him of racism and demanding his resignation. Joe Rogan criticized this incident as an example of woke culture, where questioning certain ideas leads to hostility, arguing that it often demands strict adherence and labels dissenters as the opposition. Do you think woke Hollywood's lost its touch? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below.
Really uncomfortable person. Mm-hmm. It's almost like too many people paid attention to him for too long, and it freaked him out. Mm-hmm. I don't know him, but when I see stories about him or interviews with him or any weird controversy that happens with him, I'm almost like, I think the guy just got overwhelmed.
Rogan discussed a common tactic to silence or dismiss someone by labeling them, often as a racist. He mentioned how in movies, Bill Murray's characters often start out as edgy, sarcastic personalities, but by the end are transformed into more likable, woke-friendly versions of themselves. He noted how it feels as though Murray, after being in the spotlight for so long, may have become overwhelmed by all the attention, especially when controversies or strange stories about him surface.
I haven't watched the Lord of the Rings thing on Amazon, but I heard it's a fucking disaster.
Oh, is it? It's the most expensive TV show ever made.
Fucking disaster.
Joe Rogan gave his thoughts on Amazon's Lord of the Rings series, calling it a disaster. He shared the criticisms of those who feel the show is moving away from the original elements that made Tolkien's world unique. Instead of focusing on epic battles, friendship, and the fight between good and evil, Rogan thinks the show adds unnecessary social messages, which he feels ruin the original magic.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Another thing in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that got controversial was the Bruce Lee scenes. Yeah, a lot of people felt like you made Bruce Lee into an asshole.
He brought up the controversy surrounding Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, specifically the portrayal of Bruce Lee. He noted that many people felt that the film made Bruce Lee look bad. Quentin Tarantino responded, saying he was hesitant to discuss it because he didn't want this topic to overshadow the entire conversation. He acknowledged that he expected it to come up, especially since he'd heard some back and forth discussions about it on Rogan's show.
One thing, reports from the front lines of kids in high school today, that shit's out the window. That word retard comes flying out of these kids' mouths. They're bringing that back strong.
Yeah.
They are bringing that back strong.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that woke thing.
On his podcast, Joe Rogan and Mike Barker discussed how high school kids today are pushing back against woke culture. They mention reports showing that many young people are moving away from it, with Barker emphasizing how freely certain language is used among teens, signaling a rejection of what's often seen in colleges. Barker shares that his youngest child was exposed to intense woke culture, but now returns home questioning it, expressing confusion over how things have shifted.
Well, I'm asking
Canceled
you to
effectively.
distance yourself from that, is
But
actually what I'm trying
But that's
to do.
not what you're doing, though. You're associating him with that, clearly.
I don't think so.
propaganda.
I do not
you don't
see this
think
as propaganda.
that? Look at the way it's phrased on
Okay.
your article. This sort of race science is outdated.
He found himself in a heated exchange with Flint Dibble, who attempted to criticize Graham Hancock, who was present during the discussion. Dibble asked Rogan to distance himself from what he called race science associated with Hancock's work. Rogan pushed back, challenging Dibble on his wording and approach. When Dibble referenced tweets from Hancock's followers as evidence, Rogan interrupted, stating that those followers' views are not Hancock's responsibility. What do you think about Joe Rogan's unapologetic takedown of Hollywood's woke machine? Let us know in the comments.